The big question now will be, how do we practice critical literacy with our students at the classroom level? Realizing the difficulty of translating the highly philosophical theory of critical literacy into practice, many scholars have created frameworks of critical literacy practice. The earliest framework will be the 4 resources model by Freebody and Luke that was created in 1990. And there are some other models that you can consult with. These models can be used as guidelines for practicing critical literacy with our students. Which model to use will depend on the resources that we have at hand and the characteristics of our classroom, such as students' age, gender, cultural backgrounds, curriculum requirements, etc. Synthesizing the frameworks and models listed in the previous slide, I found that essentially through the practice of critical literacy, we as teachers are suggested to first develop a critical perspective in students. In text-based practices, students' critical perspective can be developed by introducing them to texts with multiple and alternative perspectives, encouraging them to question the dominant ideas and voices, as well as the voices silenced in the text, and raising their awareness of the language and idea systems that are brought into play when a text is used. Once students are aware of the different perspectives and relationships between power and language, they can be encouraged to take a critical stance towards the social norms and systems in their communities, that is, transferring the critical perspective and awareness of the multiple perspectives and power operation in a text to real-life situations, more particularly to the socio-political systems through which we live our lives. Critical literacy practices are ideally designed to encourage students to transfer the questioning of power operation in text to that in real-life situations. In other words, in the words of Luzon et al., teachers are expected to guide students to step outside of the personal to interrogate how socio-political systems and power relationships shape perceptions, responses, and actions. This understanding and awareness is the building block for encouraging students to take a critical stance towards the social justice issues in their lives. Finally, when our students have developed a critical perspective and the ability to take a critical stance towards the social systems, we can encourage them to do transformative political social actions. As I have mentioned earlier, this tenet can be translated into activities that are meaningful for students' immediate communities, but still manageable by both teacher and students. Our discussion will now turn to the strategies for critical literacy teaching. We will start with the strategies for developing students' critical perspective and stance. One of the most popularly used strategies is problem posing, as proposed by McLaughlin and deVoogd in 2004. Problem posing is a critical literacy strategy that is very versatile. It can be used with various kinds of text, from narrative to informational text, as well as other forms of text, such as the multimedia. After reading the text, viewing the video, or discussing the situation that is going to be analyzed, readers engage in critical literacy by using questions such as the following to engage in critical analysis. Who is in the text or picture or situation? Who is missing? Whose voices are represented? Whose voices are marginalized or discounted? What are the intentions of the author? What does the author want the reader to think? What would an alternative text or picture or situation say? How can the reader use this information to promote equity? Taken from McLaughlin and deVoogd, 2004, page 40. The rest of the story is an adaptation of problem posing that encourages students to use their background knowledge to examine what is missing or underrepresented in a text and to research that perspective. Switching is a very effective strategy to be used here. In this strategy, after reading a text, the teacher poses a problem or question such as what race is represented in the text. Students respond by imagining an alternative version of the story by switching races, critically analyzing the author's emphasis on one race and how the message would change if the other race were emphasized. Depending on the questions or problems posed, the teacher can suggest students to switch the other literary elements of the story, such as theme, settings of time and place, characters' gender, occupation, appearance, relationship with other characters, and the like. Another teaching strategy popularly used in the practice of critical literacy is alternative perspectives. McLaughlin and deVoogd offer at least two kinds of activities that can be done with this strategy, namely, first, creating alternative texts, and second, juxtapositioning texts. In creating alternative texts, students can, for instance, read a fairy tale and then write an alternative version to the tale. In juxtapositioning, students are presented with at least two texts on the same topic by the same or different authors. The texts can be in any forms, including photos and advertisements. With fairy tales, for example, students can read two versions of the same fairy tale of Cinderella to see how different stories of the same topic can create different perspectives. Teachers can also present students with two photos of the same event. For example, two photos from two newspapers reporting the same incident of bushfires. Students can compare the two photos and also the perspectives used in both. The final and ultimate goal of critical literacy practice is to encourage students to take action to transform their world. As I have suggested earlier, social action here should be defined in the local, immediate contexts of students. Asking such questions as, what can we do to change this situation? What can we do to promote social justice? How can we use the information we just obtained to promote justice and equity? Can help encourage students to think of taking a transformative action. Students can then respond with their ideas of how to promote justice and equity. This activity in itself is transformative. However, we can certainly also create activities in which students put their ideas into actions. Here are some examples of classroom projects translating the dimension of social action in critical literacy. In the first example, we have a teacher who invited her students to write a letter to an author expressing concerns with the gender bias represented in the author's book. In the second example, we have students who wrote a letter to a magazine or newspaper or blog or TV station demanding them to give more perspectives. And in the third example, we have students who do projects by writing a letter to the authorities to express concerns with social justice issues in their communities. There are also projects that make use of multimodal texts, such as these. First, promoting religious diversity through posters. Second, creating an artwork or caricature to voice criticism on certain issues, such as water conservation. Third, holding a photography exhibition to raise awareness of local social issues. And fourth, posting tweets to criticize and question the social construction of gender. Can you think of other ideas for social action projects that you would like to have with your future students? Now that we have learned about some strategies to teach critical literacy, the Guided Comprehension Direct Instruction Framework is one possible framework to apply the strategies. The framework, proposed by McLaughlin and Allen in 2002, consists of: explain what the critical literacy strategy is and how it works to students, and then demonstrate the strategy using a think aloud, a read aloud, and an overhead projector or chalkboard or any other medium, and then guide the students to work in small groups or with partners to create responses. Practice by having students work with partners or independently to apply the critical literacy strategy. And finally, reflect on how the strategy helps students read from a critical stance. In the next mini lecture, I will model a practice of critical literacy in the classroom. For more references on critical literacy and its practice, please consult these journal articles and books. See you in the next mini lecture.